Okay, today we are talking changes to the CFI ACS. Is now the ACS no longer the PTS? What is different between the CFI PTS that we've been testing on for decades and the CFI ACS? That's what we're covering today. Let's get to it. Hey guys, what is up? John here from fly8mikealpha.com. Today broadcasting live, not really live, it's YouTube, but from the DC-6 airplane house. Yes, it's a DC-6 airplane and it's also a house. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house here at the Fly8 Mike Alpha Pilot Lodge in Big Lake, Alaska, and we're going to be covering everything you need to know about the changes to the CFI ACS. Now, first we'll go ahead and talk about the specifics, what few details have changed in there, and then the overall architecture of what's the grander scheme here? What's the broader picture of changing from the PTS to the ACS? How does that affect the overall check ride for you? Now, keep in mind, this is going into effect May of 2024. If you're watching this video after, then yeah, you need to be studying for the ACS. If you're taking your check ride next week, it's still going to be on PTS standards. So anyways, first thing is you can explicitly, it's spelled out now, use pre-made lesson plans for your check ride. Now, a lot of examiners were already allowing this to be the case. Some would actually force you to sit there and create a lesson plan during the check ride. That is no longer the case. You can fully use pre-made lesson plans because, of course, if you're using like the Fly8 Mike Alpha pre-approved syllabus, pre-approved lesson plans that you get with our course online at fly8mikealpha.com, links in the description below, to prepare for your CFI check ride and all those CFI prep materials that come with it that guarantee you'll pass your check ride. If you're using that and during the check ride you whip out the CFI lesson plans, or say the private pilot lesson plans or commercial pilot lesson plans from Fly8 Mike Alpha, that can be a very short conversation for you and the DPE, because clearly, yeah, that's an approved lesson plan. You didn't create it, but you understand what's in it. You can teach from it. You know how to read it, so go ahead and definitely read the lesson plans before you actually get to the check ride. Don't be reading it for the first time when you're sitting there with the examiner. Read through all those lesson plans that you're going to present them, but it makes a lot more sense to have experienced instructors like us create those lesson plans and send them out to the pilot community, rather than you, a brand new instructor who's never taught a student in your entire life, to have to actually create lesson plans about steep turns and stalls and slow flight and all that stuff. So that's number one. Number two, talking about slow flight. How slow flight's going to be done on the CFI check ride has changed a little bit, okay? So now what they are calling out is, keep in mind, you got knowledge areas, risk management areas, and skills areas. All the skills areas have to be done. This is part of the ACS architecture that we'll get to more in a little bit. But at least one of the knowledge items and one of the risk management items also has to be done for each one of these tasks. Now, anything else that's explicitly explained here also has to be completed, but it's pretty simple. They just simply want you to be able to teach slow flight. Not do it perfectly, but teach it. So they want you to have knowledge on the purpose and procedures for proper slow flight. Proper slow flight is going to be per the private pilot ACS or commercial pilot ACS, whatever it is that you're teaching that student to do. So during the check ride, there's going to be a simulation of, hey, you have a private pilot student, you have a commercial pilot student, and go ahead and teach slow flight according to those standards. So follow the private pilot or commercial pilot ACS for how you're going to teach it. They want you to have knowledge about the aerodynamics associated with slow flight in various airplane configurations, including the relationship between angle of attack, airspeed, load factor, power setting, airplane weight and center of gravity, airplane attitude, and yaw effects. We go into that in depth in our CFI course online on fly8mikealpha.com, because there actually is a lot of meat in there of truly understanding and, most importantly, being able to articulate back to the examiner on the day of your check ride the relationship between angle of attack, CG, power settings, load factor on the wing on the airplane, how airspeed, yaw, all that stuff is going to affect it. And then they really want you to know some of the common errors during the task. Common errors being fixating on an instrument, fixating outside, and not being able to keep an eye on the altimeter every so often, and perhaps getting off your altitude, not tracking heading because you're not looking outside enough, or you're not referencing the DG, or cross-scanning all those instruments. So common errors for slow flight. Again, beyond the purview of this video, we go in depth into that on the CFI course on Fly8 Mike Alpha. Now, risk management topics they have here, they want you to be aware of the risks and how to manage the risks and teach those risks of inadvertent slow flight and flight with a stall warning, which could lead to loss of control. Bottom line is, they're saying Inadvertent slow flight, it's like, hey, you're base to final, you're turning, the student got slow, what do you do? Well, you'll lower the nose, maybe add some power, you reduce the angle of attack, get rid of the stall warning if there is one. And when could you possibly get into inadvertent slow flight? You're gonna need to think of that during your CFI check ride, an example or two. Well, base to final is a great time for that to happen, or perhaps circling over a friend's house, or some people landed down in a field here in Alaska, on a gravel bar, and you're flying around them. Most of us probably watching the video don't do that. So yeah, more likely in the traffic pattern base to final. If you're flying in Alaska, then the moose stall thing that we always like to talk about, that's a real thing. Not so many moose in Florida though. Other risk management topics are range and limitations of stall warning indicators, so aircraft buffet, stall horn, etc., stall lights, uncoordinated flight, the effect of environmental elements on airplane performance. So things like turbulence, microbursts, and most importantly here, I think the biggest one here is high density altitude. Very easy to get an airplane slow and on the backside of the power curve when you're in a high density altitude situation. Be able to articulate that even if you are a CFI in Alaska or Florida or flatlands of California, Texas, whatever. Be able to understand and articulate what effects density altitude has on airplanes, even if you haven't flown in high density altitude situations. The first time you do that, or the first time your student goes to do that, it's gonna be a big surprise to them. We wanna make sure that we're doing our best, even if we're not giving them the real world experience of flying in high density altitudes with us during their training, that hopefully they'll be prepared for it when they do encounter it. And then lastly, in risk management, we have things like collision avoidance, so clearing turns, basically a big thing there. And then any sort of distraction, task prioritization, and loss of situational awareness of, hey, what's my heading supposed to be? What's my altitude? Where am I? Things like that. That might be overwhelming for the student during the maneuver. Now, skills, this is what you're going to be doing. So you, the applicant, demonstrate and simultaneously explain, talking while you're flying, how to clear the area, select an entry altitude that allows the task to be completed no lower than 1,500 feet AGL for single-engine airplanes, or 3,000 feet AGL for multi-engine airplanes. So have those altitudes in your mind. Picking something like 2,000 AGL to start with, good idea. Give yourself some buffer there in case you are climbing or descending. Establish and maintain an airspeed, here it is, at which any further increase in angle of attack, increase in load factor, or reduction in power would result in a stall warning. So we're not hanging there with the stall horn going off like some of us were trained to do in private pilot days 10, 15 years ago. We're hanging there just above the stall horn. So we don't want to hear the stall horn blaring the whole time, just right above it. Very similar to ACS standards here is what they're explaining. And they want you to accomplish a coordinated straight and level flight, turns, climbs, and descents with the aircraft configured as specified by the evaluator without the stall warning. So no buffeting, no stall horn, none of that stuff, no flying with the airspeed needle in the right arc, all that. Maintain the specified altitude, plus or minus 50 feet, specified heading, plus or minus 10 degrees, airspeed, plus 5 minus 0. So bottom line is they do not want you to get slow here. They do not want you to really activate that stall horn. Real world guys, like you get a little beep from the stall horn, you get a momentary updraft that could activate the stall horn. That doesn't mean you went -1 knot and you failed, because it's plus 5 knots minus 0. It just means, hey, you can explain to the examiner as you would a student, ooh, yep, a little updraft there, a little increase in angle of attack momentarily, but see, our airspeed didn't change. We're staying at the same airspeed, but angle of attack changed there. Now we're back to a safe angle of attack. We're hanging right here at the edge of the high angle of attack. Let's be careful and not get, any slower. Let's not get the nose up any higher, all that good stuff. And then maintain any specified angle of bank as specified by the examiner, plus or minus 5 degrees. So if they ask for some turns, or they might just say, show me how you would teach a student, you should be including some turns in your slow flight. They should not be 20, 30 degree bank turns in slow flight. They should be 5 degrees, very gentle stuff. And you should say, I'm gonna make a 5 degree left turn here. And then you should be able to hold 5 degrees and not roll off to 15 or shallow it up to, 0 or whatever it is until you're ready. As any CFI task goes, yes, these are standards. There's going to be CFIs who earned their ticket that lost 55 feet on their check ride. There's going to be CFIs who earned their ticket who climbed 90 feet during the check ride, even though it says plus or minus 50. Call it out, announce what you're doing wrong, saying, oh, I'm gaining altitude here, got to reduce power for altitude. Oh, I'm sinking a lot, I'm adding power. Oh, I'm still sinking, I've lost 100 feet here. Wow, let me add a whole bunch of power in. It wouldn't surprise me if that doesn't fail a check ride. I don't feel like it should cause you to fail a check ride because you're flying in the right seat, kind of new to that, not a lot of experience there. Most importantly, it's being able to analyze your own flying, fly the airplane and verbalize it so that you'll be able to analyze a student's flying and verbalize to them what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and not get the airplane into an unsafe situation. If you stall or spin the airplane during slow flight on your CFI check ride, that'll probably end the check ride. And rightfully so. We need to have high standards for our instructors out there. But at the same time, you're a beginning instructor, you're a brand new commercial pilot most likely. Most importantly, it's can you teach, not so much can you fly, you know, like Bob Hoover from the right seat. Another big change here for Area of Operation 2, Task I, that's going to be navigation and cross-country flight planning. And bottom line is what it says here in the note, preparation, presentation, and explanation of a computer-generated flight plan is an acceptable option. That's super cool. They're saying, hey, EFBs are cool, guys. We know that everyone's going to use EFBs, so no, you don't have to prepare a paper navlog for your CFI check ride and teach a paper navlog to the examiner. Now, could they request a lesson on one of those? If they're really old school, they could. Could they just ignore the ACS like so many DPs have ignored parts of the PTS in the past and run their own check ride? Yeah, that happens. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So if you know for a fact, if the gouge is that your examiner requires a paper navlog and you have to teach it, don't try to walk in there and be like, hey, I don't have to do that. They're not gonna be thrilled with you. Just do what they want. But you should be able to teach from the iPad. You should be able to have a computer-generated flight plan, but really listen to those words I said earlier, okay? Preparation, presentation, and explanation of a computer-generated flight plan is an acceptable option, all right? You have to be able to explain what ForeFlight or Garmin Pilot or whatever EFB you use did, how it got those calculations. Hey, here's our winds aloft. Yep. Okay, are those interpolated? Are those referenced from 50 miles away? What did the computer do to do your wind correction angle? You need to know that, how that iPad is working. Are those winds displayed in true or magnetic? Because a lot of times they're changing them over to magnetic and not even telling you. And you need to know because you need to be giving accurate information to your student who should hopefully learn the old school way as well during their training at least once and then move into using an EFB. Where I see people get into trouble is they show me the flight plan on the EFB and I start saying, okay, how did they come up with these winds? They're different than what I see on aviationweather.gov. Why are they different? And they can't explain that. Or well, is it magnetic? Is it true? Hey, this course here, did they do the variation before or after the converting from true to magnetic? You know, how did the iPad do it? They have no idea. And ForeFlight and Garmin don't make that information super easy, but it is on their websites to go ahead and Google that. They even have tech support lines you can call if you're using their product, you're paying them. You can ask these types of questions. You have to know how that computer is working if you're going to bring it to a check ride and try to just tap a button and then move on. Last change here, not a major change really, but for the FOI, the fundamentals of instructing, you're going to have to do task E and F, which are elements of effective teaching in a professional environment, very similar to just kind of reworded. I mean, let's face it, the FAA is kind of a bureaucracy. They have to justify why they exist sometimes. Obviously, there's real reasons why they exist, like, hey, you know, make the door not fall off the 737. But when they're not busy doing that, then they're busy justifying their existence of just rewording things. So elements of effective teaching in a professional environment, same thing as CFI professionalism and responsibilities from the PTS really. And then elements of an effective teaching that include risk management and accident prevention. This is going to bring us into our next topic here of what's the broader scheme of things? How do things change with the advent of the ACS versus the PTS? Decision-making and risk management is why the ACS came out in the first place, and the FAA justifying why they exist. But aside from that, it really was a fundamental shift from rote memorization and rote testing of individual tasks and pass here, fail there, pass here, fail there, to a broader picture of, does this person know how to fly an airplane and will they make good, safe decisions? Obviously, any private pilot who gets their ticket, has wet ink on their ticket, probably shouldn't be flying from California to New York. A lot of them are capable of doing it. A lot of them would die along the way, especially depending on what weather they encounter. But bottom line is, they're all okay to be private pilots as long as the ones who don't have those skills yet and the experience to do so on a crazy cross country like that, don't attempt it. You know, or attempt it on very fair weather days and stay within their own personal minima. So that's really what we need to be teaching and what we need to be thinking about as CFI applicants going into a CFI ACS check ride is how are you going to teach and develop aeronautical decision-making skills within your student. And I've got a number of ways we can teach you to do that. We go over a lot of ways in the course, but here's one, probably the biggest, quick, easy cheat sheet way that you need to be doing on your CFI checkride, especially when it comes time for lesson plans. Whether you buy one of our courses at Flight Mike Alpha or not, this is totally free. It's on our private pilot, premium private pilot ground school page for the 2024 ground school. Click on private pilot syllabus download that syllabus, and in here at the end of every single lesson. So for Lesson 2, what do we talk about? Oh, we talk about things like weather reports, and we do collision avoidance in the air, and trim usage, and rudder usage, and turns to heading, and climbs and descents, and we park and secure the aircraft, positive exchange of flight controls. And we have in here, this is the big key, debrief questions for that lesson that you should be asking your student. This is how you're going to help foster and develop aeronautical decision-making skills in them. You're going to, before you fly with them, go over this scenario. Hey, our scenario for this lesson is your friend is in town and would like to go on a short scenic flight. Here's your home airport METAR and the home airport TAF. So now we get to go ahead and think about, hey, is this good weather? How do we make that go, no-go decision? Starting right there in lesson 1 and lesson 2, not waiting till lesson 20-something to have the students start making those go, no-go decisions. Have them start looking at weather and thinking about, is this good weather? Is this bad weather? What does the METAR say? What does it look like out the window? And having them make those correlations in their mind, that's how we're going to do it. And then with these debrief questions at the end of the flight, asking them, what is the difference between VR and VY? Because you can just say, hey, VX, VY, VR, all that stuff makes sense? Yeah. They have no idea. So explain to me, student, what's the difference between that? During takeoff or climb out, the turn coordinator is asking for more right rudder. Why? Why is the ball to the right when we take off and climb and we don't really push on the rudders at all? Why does the ball go to the right? Make the student answer that question, because that makes them start thinking about what's happening with the airplane. It develops those aeronautical decision-making skills. It develops a deeper understanding and allows them to correlate what they're learning in the ground school, what they're learning with you in the airplane, what's happening in the airplane with reality and the physics of how airplanes fly. So that's the broader picture of how the ACS is going to work as a CFI applicant. If administered properly, this will actually decrease the length of CFI check rides. It will cut it down to perhaps hour and a half, 2 hours for the oral. If examiners administer it that way, I wouldn't be surprised when this first goes into effect in May that examiners are confused by it and some orals wind up taking 6 or 8 hours because they think they have to do the whole thing. But really all they have to do is go look at what's required in that area of operation. And then for the required tasks, when they have to choose a task or they have to do task C or task F or whatever it is, they only have to do or talk about and evaluate one knowledge item, one risk management item, and all of the skills items associated with that. Or as they see fit, they could choose to do the whole thing. Our course at flightmikealpha.com is going to walk you through every single task and every single area of operation and all of the risk management items and all of the knowledge items and all of the skill items so that you're prepared for whatever comes your way during your check ride. That's how we can guarantee you're going to pass your CFI check ride when you take our course. But the actual check ride itself is going to be much easier than what you see in our course, and hopefully it's going to be a lot easier than what you see during your training if you are in fact getting good training. Any questions on these changes or on any of the courses we offer at Flight Mike Alpha, from private, instrument, commercial, CFI, tailwheel, seaplane, all that good stuff, or if you guys just want to come hang out in Alaska with us this summer, stay in the DC-6 airplane house. This is a pretty sweet little 2-bedroom, 1-bath. We've got a DC-9 being built at the other end of the runway. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We've got our control tower going up. We've got our DC-9 and 727 airplane house all there with some other cabins. If you guys are looking for a cheap way to come visit Alaska and stay on the runway, we've got some 1-bedroom, 1-bath cabins as well right there next to the 727. Super excited for it all. Excited to have our students come in here this summer. We're already getting pretty booked up. There are still a few more spots if you guys are looking to do some training or do some flying around Alaska. Any questions on anything, guys? That's what we're here for. Thank you for watching. Thank you for becoming a CFI. If you're watching this video, I'm guessing that's what you're doing. We need more instructors out there like yourself. So as always, guys, if you cannot fly every day, flightmikealpha.com. We will see you all the next time from the Flight Mike Alpha Pilot Lodge here in Big Lake, Alaska.